Hi again, and welcome back to The Savvy Psychologist. I'm Dr. Ellen Hendrickson, and every Friday, I will help you meet life's challenges with evidence-based research, a sympathetic ear, and zero judgment. Now, since the election, I've heard from many listeners who are concerned about the Trump presidency. And the Anxiety Specialty Center where I work has seen a big uptick in patients worried about the next 4 years. But even if you support Trump, the combative, chaotic state of the nation isn't great for anyone's well-being. Now, the Savvy Psychologist aims to help you be happier and healthier no matter your political stripes. Regardless of your partisan leanings, scrolling through the news from both the right and left these days is like walking through a Halloween haunted house. Scary, horrifying things pop out at you from every angle. Last week on the show, we talked about how to handle the fast and furious volume of bad news coming at us. So this week, we'll talk about how to deal with the content of the news. To do that, here are 5 ways to take care of yourself over the next 4 years. Tip number 1, don't go it alone. In times of stress, gathering with like-minded others is vital. Especially if you're a speck of blue in a sea of red, or vice versa, do your best to find your tribe. Everyone needs validation and hope from others, and isolation breeds anxiety and hopelessness. It's exhausting to be the only one of any demographic, so do your best to find your people. You'll know them by the pink pussy hats or the red baseball caps. Tip number 2, take the long view. To feel better, picture the future. But that's what I've been doing, you protest, and the future ain't pretty. Well, in that case, envision further, past the current turmoil. This is a technique adapted from treatment for panic attacks. When people with panic envision a panic attack, they usually picture the worst, most humiliating panic attack possible. They'll describe, say, having a panic attack and collapsing in the middle of a crosswalk on a busy street, or flailing around and making a scene in a crowded restaurant. And then, the movie in their mind stops there. So, to counter this image, we keep the movie going. Let's take the collapse in the crosswalk scenario. I'll ask, okay, what would happen next? And they'll say, well, maybe someone would ask if I'm okay. And then, well, maybe they'd call an ambulance. And next, well, then I'd be taken to the hospital, monitored, and eventually cleared to go home. Okay, the take home. It wouldn't be pretty, but everything would settle down in the long run. Now, apply this tool not just to panic, but to the world. It's not pretty right now, but humanity is scrappy. And even if things may not be okay in the short run, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, paraphrasing 19th century minister and abolitionist Theodore Parker, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. In other words, the world today has some very real problems, but over time, things get better. This earth is more peaceful and more tolerant than at any point in human history. And it's not to say that real people aren't suffering, but think of it in terms of this line from The Battlefield, a poem by William Cullen Bryant, and as it happens, the title of House of Pain's final album. Truth, crushed to earth, shall rise again. Tip number 3, pick your fight. The passage of time isn't the only factor in a better future, of course. We also need action. But this is where so many of us find ourselves paralyzed. The news today can make you feel like the world is ending and you have to save it, which is totally overwhelming. We feel like we need to do everything and end up doing nothing. So choose your battles. Pick 1 or 2 issues or organizations you can support or fight. By narrowing your scope, you can focus your energy. And once you've chosen your issues, give money, volunteer your time, contact your representatives. Do what you can to save your slice of the world. And then, tip number 4, puppy massages or the equivalent. BuzzFeed was on the right track when it live-streamed video of a puppy getting a massage during the first presidential debate back in September. So don't put your head in the sand permanently, but be sure to get your own dose of warm fuzzies to balance out the grind of fighting the good fight. Read a totally non-political escapist novel. Waste a blissful hour clicking through dream vacation destinations. And of course, watch those fuzzy puppies. And finally, tip number 5. Take the advice of the notorious RBG. Last year, Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote an opinion piece about work-life balance. She shared the advice her mother-in-law gave her on her wedding day. In every good marriage, she said, it helps sometimes to be a little deaf. Ginsburg goes on to apply the advice to her current workplace. She writes, "When a thoughtless or unkind word is spoken, best tune out. Reacting in anger or annoyance will not advance one's ability to persuade." To which I say, Amen. To sum up, gather with others, take the long view, narrow your focus of activism when you're feeling overwhelmed, take breaks to take care of yourself, and sometimes it's okay to play a mental test pattern for a bit. Keep yourself happy and healthy by signing up for the newsletter at quickanddirtytips.com/newsletters or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. You can also listen on Spotify, like on Facebook, and now follow on Twitter. Next week, we'll talk about complaining, why it's bad for your health, and more importantly, how to stop. I'm Dr. Ellen Hendrickson, and The Savvy Psychologist is strictly for informational purposes and doesn't substitute for mental health care from a licensed professional. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all next week for a happier, healthier mind.